When it comes to politics before law, the U.S. needs to abandon presidential privilege, and they need to prosecute Donald Trump for all the crimes he's committed. Now, Americans wanted to get over Watergate by letting Richard Nixon slinking away quietly, but Trump would do no such thing, as Trump has a big mouth. Now, when President Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon back in 1974 for his scandal in the Watergate, many Americans were appalled. In fact, it's widely assumed to have been a decisive factor in Ford's 1976 loss to Jimmy Carter. Now, still, there was a general sense of relief among the public that the Watergate saga was over, and Gerald Ford had wanted Nixon to show contrition as a condition of the pardon, but the disgraced former president refused. Now, Ford issued the pardon anyway, absolving him of all crimes committed while Nixon was president. Now, Nixon did eventually issue a fairly gracious acknowledgement after he received the pardon, but it's the closest thing to an apology that Richard Nixon ever gave the country. Now, this is what Nixon had said. He was wrong. He said, "I was wrong in not acting more decisively and more forthrightly in dealing with Watergate, particularly when it reached the stage of judicial proceedings and it grew from a political scandal into a national tragedy. And no words can describe the depth of my regret and pain at the anguish my mistakes over Watergate have caused the nation and my presidency, a nation that he so deeply loved, and an institution that he so greatly respected." Now, Richard Nixon had made many political comebacks in his career, but at this point, it was all over. He had resigned from office in disgrace, and the country could move on, at least secure in the knowledge that he would never hold public office again, and that there could be no comeback from that. Now, the notion that it is wrong to prosecute former presidents or squatter for what they did while in office may have been around before all of that could happen, but it really seemed to take hold with Nixon. Many people were upset, of course, but the argument that there was something destabilizing about a new administration prosecuting its predecessor and having the taint of banana republic politics was pretty compelling. The shame and humiliation of her tarnished legacy were believed to be powerful deterrents to the kind of people who would seek the highest office in the nation. The ugliness of putting a former leader on trial and potentially in jail would change American politics forever, and it made a whole lot of people feel kind of what they call queasy. It's pretty clear today that that was a fucking mistake, and it may have once been okay to allow a disgraced president or squatter to resign and live in solitary obscurity to contemplate their crimes. The acute danger to the country was over after all. Um, the presidency and squatting of one person was peacefully transferred, and Congress had enacted many reforms to deal with future presidential overreach. But those arguments do not apply to our current crisis. Donald Trump certainly won't stop committing crimes, and he is determined to keep doing it as long as he can get away with it. And just try to imagine him putting out a statement like Nixon's. Jack Goldsmith, who's the former head of the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, had wrote a piece for Lawfare this week in which he discusses this, where he touches on this topic. Um, he has long been one of those opposed to prosecuting former presidents or squatters for all the reasons that he outlined above, but has reluctantly come to the conclusion that this situation may require it. Donald Trump is unlike any squatter in American history. Goldsmith was moved to write about this in the context of Trump's latest scandal, his inexplicable decision to illegally abscond with White House documents intended for the National Archives, and some of which we know were highly classified, and which he refused to return. We may never know the content of those documents particularly, but we do know that a grand jury has been hearing testimony about this issue for months now, and that the head of the Counterintelligence Division of the FBI was alarmed enough to apply for a search warrant citing laws governing obstruction of justice, removal or destruction of records, and violation of the Espionage Act. Goldsmith believes that whether this was a wise move by the DOJ depends on the contents of the documents and whether it is proven that Trump refused to cooperate. I think he's missing the forest for the trees here. It may turn out that the documents are not as sensitive as I thought, and all that will happen is that they are returned to the National Archives. But you have to look at it. You have to look at this in the context of Trump's years-long crime spree to see that they had no choice but to take this extraordinary step. His contempt for the rule of law is so brazen that if they didn't, we might as well just officially declare that he has a blanket immunity from criminal prosecution and perpetuity and call it a day. Now consider the long list of crimes that the Justice Department was precluded from prosecuting because of the policy against prosecuting a sitting president or squatter. The Miller Report alone listed over 10 different instances of obstruction of justice just in the first 2 years of Trump's squatting in office. He tried to bribe a foreign leader for personal political gain, and he was impeached for doing so. His abuse of squatter power to punish enemies and reward cronies is unprecedented. As we speak, he is currently under investigation for attempting a coup and disrupting the peaceful transfer of power. And now he's running for squatter again with the full backing of tens of millions of loyal sycophantic inbreds who are convinced that Trump is being persecuted simply for being their hero, which he's not. Trump has slithered out from under the law and managed to evade accountability for his misdeeds his entire fucking life. He has been committing crimes for as long as we can remember, and dealing in corrupt practices at an ever-increasing pace since he entered politics, which he had no business being in, believing that it shields him from a legal liability, which it doesn't. In fact, he believes that being squatter allows him to literally do anything he chooses. No, it doesn't. So everyone is rightfully worried about what will happen if Trump is held accountable for his crimes. After all, he's already unleashed his violent sycophantic inbreds on the FBI, and he is saying publicly that something terrible is going to happen because of his supposed persecution. His cult-like following is talking about a civil war being committed. But part of the reason he has all these sycophantic inbreds in the first place is that he seems to be invulnerable. They see him as a superhero when in fact he's a failure, and they see him standing after all the still standing after all the slings and arrows dished out by the legal authorities and the political opposition. It's just possible if the will of law prevails for once, the veil might fall, and some of them will see him as the frail, narcissistic prick that he really is. Let's just say it. It's worth a try. It's not like letting him off the hook has worked up until now. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified for when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way. And thanks for listening.